Well, holy shit. I actually managed to do it. After procrastinating for ages, I finally managed to produce an audiobook version of the Lunatic Fringe book. It's currently available on all Amazon sites, audible.com, and shortly on iTunes. And if you're the page-turning type, it's also, of course, still available in Kindle form, paperback, and hardback on Amazon. 10 hours and 10 years worth of Blue Skies Magazine's articles, all available to you right fucking now, including a few author's notes and even an apology or two. Enjoy.
In a world.
Mate, hold up. We said we're done with the serious intros.
Who said?
Well, we did.
I don't remember that.
Well, I said it, and you're me, so, you know.
Well, I don't care. In a world.
Hey, I told you. We're keeping it light.
You do it on your own then.
Well, technically, I already am. So, anyway. Fuck yeah. Pure wild flight. Get it down ya. How good? Visit nzaerosports.com.
I get to do the next one.
Well, obviously, you moron. We both do.
Of course, I absolutely love the NZ Aerosports business model. I mean, come on. One glance at an Icarus fuck yeah sticker and you know it lines up perfectly with the fucking pilot mentality. But outside their wonderful use of colorful language and a great company vibe, there's a long list of reasons to say NZ Aerosports fuck yeah. NZ Aerosports blows me away right out of the gate as a canopy manufacturer with a bold offer. They give you 10 jumps on your brand new nylon to decide if you want to keep it, swap it out, or even return it for a refund. I mean, seriously, how incredible is that? That's like getting halfway through a prom and deciding you prefer the slightly racier date that goes down faster. Seriously, they do that. If you're not madly in love with your new canopy after 10 jumps, they'll let you swap it out for another size or model, or even get your money back. And the range of canopies they've got? Man, they've got a style canopy to fit every jumper and every situation with models you know and trust, like the Sapphire 3, the perfect choice for the beginner or intermediate canopy pilot. The Crossfire 3, when you're ready to kick it up that elliptical notch. The JFX 2, if you're looking to up your new swoop game. The Leia as the workhorse and dirtwater dirt beast. Or the Petra. The Petra cranks out crazy power and is nothing short of a record breaker. But hey, it's not always about speed either. Take the Kraken. Built as a low pack volume canopy specifically with wingsuiting in mind, she gives you all the performance you're looking for with the reliability you need that'll have you itching for that next formation, rodeo, or puffy cloud. So the equipment is top of the line kick-ass stuff as you already know, but how about the team? Well, the customer service gang is there to sort you out whenever you need them. Maddie and Beto are always there to help with Jen holding the reins. They're available for you at sales@nzaerosports.com, and they've got a kick-ass live chat tool on the website if you're wanting to hit someone up right away. These are the crew you're going to want to talk to get those custom orders in. With the stock nylon, once you know what you want, they'll have that shit on a FedEx truck as soon as the credit card machine says approved and get you in the air in no time. For your custom orders, you'll be able to get a time frame for building and shipping when you design it, so get to it. And demos. They've got demos in the US available from their partner Rock Sky Market. The whole US demo fleet is there with Sapphire 3, Crossfire 3, Kraken, JFX2, and Leia canopies in a range of sizes. They also offer student and tandem demos in the US. Bottom line, every step of the way, NZ Aerosports is there to get you what you need, and I personally couldn't be happier to be teamed up with them here on Lunatic Fringe. And now, time to get started with Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, brought to you proudly by NZ Aerosports. Fuck yeah!
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, and again, the power of the internet bringing me another rock star. Tell me, who the fuck are you and what do you do?
My name's Jason Moledzki. I'm an artist, I'm an athlete, I'm an adventurer, and I'm an entrepreneur, a coach.
You're a busy guy.
Fucking A, I am. Fucking A.
I've been keeping up with your exploits for a very long time. In fact, the first time our paths crossed, I think was Cross Keys in like 2004, many years ago. And you've been all over the map, not just in the sport but in life. And I've been wanting to chase you down for quite some time. I know that there's a lot of people that will be excited to see your name come up on the list of episodes.
That's a couple decades ago now, Dean.
I know. I don't know how in the hell that much time got behind us so quickly, but it did.
Yeah. I'm constantly astonished at how quickly the life just blinks by. And, you turn around and you think, oh, yeah, I was just at that boogie. Shit, that was 20 years ago.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, though, and I don't know if it's just because the memories are so sharp because of what we do, but skydiving memories seem to stick really, really well.
Well, don't you think there's a part of that has to do with how our brain imprints, right? And impactful memories and emotions, things that have a powerful emotion where they really leave an imprint on us are going to stay at the foreground, and things that are pleasurable, right?
For sure.
And kind of in the middle, the day-to-day, it just washes by and we tend to forget about the ordinary stuff.
Which is fine. I'm happy remembering all this kick-ass shit that's happened.
Yeah.
So in regard to not necessarily just skydiving, but anything extreme sports wise, how did you get started in this? Has it always been in your nature?
Yeah. My mom was pretty smart to recognize that I was a kid that needed a lot of activity, and she put me in gymnastics at a young age, and I was the champion high jump and pole vault and gymnast, and I rode bicycles in like BMX bicycle rodeos and did all that kind of stuff as a kid. So well before I ever started skydiving, I was one of those Gumby kids that just had to be flipping and doing somersaults.
Absolutely. We seem to be kind of skipping in and out on the connection here a little bit. Yeah. So if I miss some stuff, I'll get you to repeat. So how did skydiving start to enter your life? I mean, was that something that you had always thought about, or was it?
Well, I was that kid who jumped off the roof with a black garbage bag. I literally did that as a kid into the backyard. That have the pile of leaves built up in the fall,
right?
Rake them all together and jump off the roof of the house. Like that was literally me. So I didn't see it really as a surprise that I started skydiving. But when I did actually start jumping, it was because I was in a pretty dark place in my life. I'd been through a lot of trauma, a lot of really tough stuff in my early years. And I was 21 years old. And part of me really didn't want the parachute to open. I went to the drop zone, like ready, set, die. Just like, I'm tired of, the rough ride that I've been on. And if this doesn't work, fine. I'm okay with it.
Sure.
Man, and I had immediately I had a left turn, 90-degree left turn out. I don't know why I say left, but I always think that my life was on a trajectory. And the second I stepped out that door, it
turned to the left.
Entirely new life ahead of me.
It's kind of funny. I've often thought, I'm sure you have as well. I've known a few suicides in my life and people that just didn't want to fight that fight anymore. And I always wondered what would have happened if they had done exactly what you did and went, something, fuck it. I'm just going to go start living a really extreme lifestyle. And if I don't make it through, I don't make it through. And I think a lot of them would have found themselves in a similar situation as you did, which is, oh, shit. Okay. There's something else.
Yeah. I can say even within our community, I've seen our friends get to really challenging points in their lives and then decide, you know what, maybe I am going to start base jumping. And they go out and start sending it off the bridge. And all of a sudden the life just rushes back in. And they're like, oh, I do remember what it feels like to feel good and to feel alive and to feel passionate and to love my life and love my friends and just go after it.
Sure. And a lot of us, myself included, take for granted that passion. And I've never hit that brick wall and never had to make that left turn to decide it's either this or nothing. But I can imagine it's got to be a really eye-opening experience, to wake up that next morning going, there's something worth going for. That's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I'm really, really grateful. I mean, the reason I'm sitting here today is skydiving and base jumping saved my life. Absolutely.
So it's not something you hear every day.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to think when you think about it from an outside perspective. But if I didn't have these activities come into my life, I would end up as blue collar, just grinding away.
Sure.
And that would have been the end of it for me.
Well, now let me ask you. So when you got started in skydiving, because you were going into it from such a dark place, what did that do in regard to the jump to jump fear levels that most people put up with? I mean, was it less for you, or were you still scared shitless, but not for the same reasons?
No, I mean, I was fucking terrified. Like, I'll just put some perspective on it. Okay. So at jump 50, after I had 6 months in the sport. Okay. I had started at a small static line drop zone in Canada. And at jump 50, I had gone on a trip to Florida. Somebody was going, a van load of people were driving down to Florida to go jump at Zephyr Hills back when it was Phoenix. And somebody couldn't go. There was an empty seat in the van. They offered it to me and I said, fuck it. And I wrote myself a paper will. This is how scared I was. I wrote my will on a piece of paper with a pencil and I left it on my desk at home in case I didn't come back, And when I was in the door of the plane doing my first solo from a high altitude on a turbine aircraft at a new place in a different country with all this unfamiliar stuff, I was fucking terrified, man. And even though like part of me was the daredevil, go for it, show off, like fearless, adrenaline junkie, that gymnast in me that just wants to like just send the somersaults.
Right.
At the same time, the ego part of me that didn't know how to deal with all the feelings I am a Point Break kid. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. I'm Johnny Utah in the door of the plane. I have a parachute, but I have the same experience of when he's looking out the door and he's seeing Patrick Swayze going, flipping into, his Bodie is saying, fuck you, see you later. And he's like, no, I have to get over my fear and just send it and let go of who I think I am in order to, go after who I want to be. And that is my story. That is that.
Was there ever a point coming from where you did and then getting into jumping that you look back at the twist of fate that you went from not giving a fuck whether you lived or died or whether the parachute opened to being nervous about going out and doing those jumps? I mean, because there's a bit of tasty irony in that.
So the whole full circle journey is incredible, right? I mean, sitting here as it's going to be 30 years next year. Right. So sitting here looking at myself, first of all, I'm turning 50 this year and I can't believe I'm still alive. Okay. Right. Like I was stunned that I made it to 30. And then when I made it to 40, I was like, oh, okay, I don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Right. This was not in the plans. So now when I'm completely on the other side of the wheel of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where I see, I'm a top, a champion skydiver and I have all the experience in the world and I have all the knowledge in the world and I know how dangerous it is. And I'm now just as, powerfully informed about how scared I should be, about the risks, and not nearly as willing to take the same risks that I was when I was in my 20s. Not a chance.
It's crazy, right? I mean, I part of it for me is just shit hurts more at this age. I don't know that I'm nearly as scared of death as I am injury, because I've done it enough now that the recoup and the rehab and the aches and pains that we've accumulated over the years of jumping, I'm more scared of that than I am getting myself killed.
Well, pain is a really powerful teacher, right? It's right at the top of the list. And that pain comes in lots of different ways. It's not just our own physical pain, because like my elbow hurts really bad right now. I folded it backwards on a swoop landing one time when my hands were next to my sides, and now I'm doing some strength building and that elbow is pissed.
Yeah.
Physical, the pain of losing our friends and family and seeing how dangerous this whole thing is and having to deal with the grief that comes with it it's a brutal reality of it all. So
for sure,
powerful.
I think that's those types of pains. you have to consciously make the decision at some point that you're just in it for life. You know, whether you continue to jump or not, especially when you get to our point, you've established such a large group of friends and such a large community that if I never make a skydive again or never go back onto the drop zone, I will continue to lose friends until the end of my life. It's just, that's it. But you at some point you have to accept that that's how it is. And that's a tough thing to cope with.
Well, isn't there a beautiful, a juxtaposition in this? That's the same for everybody.
Yeah.
It's we kind of lie to ourselves and pretend that it's not going to be like that for us. If we were like, if I stop jumping, I'll stop losing friends or I'll stop losing family. Well, that's a line of shit, it'll be postponed. It'll happen at a different rate. It'll be the scenario will be different. People will die for different reasons. They'll die because they're sick more of the time than they'll die from an accident. Either way, everybody's going to die. So
sure.
Fuck it, live life now. Right.
How do you feel about one of the difficult things for me to cope with in regard to losing friends with skydiving is so often it happens somewhere else and you get the message that this person or that person is gone. Do you find that makes it more difficult to deal with?
So yeah, I'm writing my book right now, my memoirs of my life, something I've been working on for quite a few years. And a lot of this story for myself starts off with losing my dad, who died. I was living in Toronto, Canada, and he died in California. Right. And so a very similar start. That was the first death that I had to deal with in my life, was my father, and at a great distance. And I never saw his body after he died. So the closure that comes from maybe holding somebody's hand after they've gone, very different. When my mom passed, it was a different experience. I've been there with my friends one-on-one when they've passed, and it's different than when they're at a distance. Now that I think that's something that we have, regardless of whether we're in the sport or not, we're going to have to learn to come to terms with that. And I find it's almost easier at a distance. I might have said the opposite when I was young, but now that I've been on this planet long enough to have experienced it a lot of times, I think it's easier from a distance. Yeah.
I've always found that when I've lost someone at a distance, instead of being there and not getting that closure, is I find that years later I still find that knee jerk expecting them to walk around the corner or expecting the phone to ring. Whereas with the people I was there for, that doesn't seem to happen. And I guess that's just a little mental twist. You never get that closure. That's a strange thing.
I kind of spin the wheel or the camera around the other way. And I think about it as, how lucky are we to have a global family? Right? Yeah. Like, one of the things I love about this sport, the nylon parachute sports, whether it's paragliding, hang gliding, base jumping, skydiving, like, you go anywhere in the world and you've got a family there, people who are going to welcome you in. You can show up at a drop zone with nothing in hand and they will feed you, they'll give you something to drink, they'll give you a place to sleep, and you'll probably be playing on a load, even if you can't afford it, before you know it. You'll get work. It's the family's wonderful. So even though it's tough to it's hard to have such a huge family because people are at such distances all the time. So example, right now I haven't seen Dukes in ages. Okay, Dukes is close to me, man. Like, we are brothers, and it's been a long time. Like, we're feeling it. We're like, man, it's been a long time. We haven't been on the same part of the earth together for a bit. And so we're like, okay, well, when can we make it happen that we can line up, our orbits around this planet for a little bit and spend some time hanging out? And so I would challenge us to say, here's the thing, like, instead of letting our friends pass and going, oh, they wasn't there when they passed, let's go see all of our friends all the time and let's spend all the time we can with them.
Sure. Or that's one huge benefit to technology, even though it can be a bit of a backhanded a way to do things. It's a bit of a curse as well as a wonderful thing. But one of the things that lockdown taught us too was You can put that technology to really good use and stay very connected to people that are on the other side of the planet as much as possible. Obviously, you want to be on the drop zone, hucking amazing loads and doing great stuff with them. But man, even just this kind of contact with people that you haven't seen in a while can really heal things up.
100%. I'm a huge advocate for the benefits and the values of connectivity. You know, this is the information age, whether we're, a lot of us don't realize that this is the information age, man. This is when everything is available to everybody as far as education and connectivity. And you can just saturate yourself with as much goodness as you want, or you can just let yourself be steamrolled by a bunch of shit if you're not don't have a powerful filter, right? Like you got to have a strong filter to say this is what's okay to let in and this is what's not. It's the world hasn't changed that way.
No, and it really is amazing. Now to jump you back to a bit more to the beginnings, you got started in the static line stuff and then you headed off to Florida to start jumping there. How did you really kind of kick off your career in the sport, working wise in skydiving or competing in skydiving, if that's how you started out first?
Yeah, it was competition driven. I had a pretty good job when I was younger, so I had the money to pay for the jumps. And I got onto four-way formation skydiving teams early on and started doing training camps in Florida with good coaches and starting learning to really be able to fly. And so we would come to Florida down to Lake Wales, in March or in December, and a couple times a winter, get some, do a high intensity camp, do 40, 50 jumps as a team. And I did that for a number of years. And eventually I moved as a team. Our whole team made a commitment. Everybody put a stack of cash into a pile and said, here's the buy-in. This is the ante. And we're all going to go and live in a house together. And we're all going to train for 6 months. And our goal was to do 400 jumps, team training. This was the winter of 97, 98. And we ended up moving to Titusville and training Spaceland.
Okay.
Alongside the Swiss team and FX and all the servers, Eric Ferday and Vivian Wiegrath. And, just the plane was full of world champion skydivers who were turning loads. And we were like the young guns, the Canadian national four-way team. We wanted to be the national four-way team. And that was the buy-in. Everybody moved down there to like a Canadian group. We're like, going to spend 6 months here training.
Right.
And man, it went to hell in a handbasket. My mentor, Sean, the guy who was the captain of the team, I had about 1,000 jumps with him by the time I had 1,500.
Oh, wow.
He hooked it in and he died swooping.
Oh, man.
Yep.
Man.
So that was this powerful motivator for me because he had been my mentor and had really driven me to progress and had literally taken me by the hand, shown me the ropes,
sure,
and become teammates. When he died, I was left kind of treading water in my life because I had all my eggs in this basket and I didn't know what to do next. And so I pointed my energy towards carrying his legacy forward. And I wanted to, he was the hot shit swooper of the day. So I wanted to take his mentorship to a new level,
sure,
and go out there and represent that. Canopy piloting was pond swooping back then.
Yeah, it was.
And I started going to the competitions with his old parachutes and the parachutes that he'd been developing, and decided to turn canopy piloting into my vocation, decided to make a career out of something that wasn't actually, it wasn't a career yet. It was
we're talking about a time in the sport when canopy piloting was still on the fringes, and it was still more of a hobby within a hobby than it was a competition. It was who can go dirt, water, dirt, and get the messiest in the pond.
Totally. Yeah.
That was
and
it.
There was only 25 or 30 people in the country who could even think about swooping the pond, and not smacking into it,
So you've decided you're gonna take canopy piloting forward in a time when that still hadn't been there. So how did you and the other swoopers start helping push the evolution of canopy piloting forward?
Well, credit where credit's due. Lyle Presse and Jim Slayton really took the bull by the horns with the formation of the Para Performance Games by Jim Slayton, the Margarita Island Venezuela Challenge with Lyle Presse, and then they partnered up to make the Pro Swoop Tour, the PST.
Oh yeah.
And they set up a bunch of dates around the country, and we would go around the country for a couple of years, and then we actually started going to Europe and doing the Pro Swoop Tour in Europe as well. Made it my mission in life to win those events and to be the one who was collecting the cash prizes, because that's how I was going to put food on my table.
Sure. Well, so that's about the time frame that our paths crossed, because the PST would go to Wildwood in Jersey, which was a great event. I mean, it was the most public of the events that I could think of, because they put that swoop pond right on the boardwalk, and you guys are literally doing your turns next to the Ferris wheel. I was just shooting video and doing tandems over the boardwalk, but we used to love watching those competitions. It was just such fun. And the crowd, who had no idea what was going on, was just enthralled by it.
Yeah, that was great times. I mean, that's definitely like the heyday of the sport. It'll never be the same as it was, because there's a certain thing about being in our adolescence, right? When we're just young and full of energy and we're not really, reined in any way. The events were changing all the time. Like the actual goal of what we were trying to do during a swoop was still changing from comp to comp to comp. And those times are the good old days. Like there'll never be another set of good old days like those.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we used to wake up whether you were swooping or not, and they had I think it was the Tuesday morning swoop club at Cross Keys, and everybody'd wake up at the crack of dawn and go hop in the Cessna, and then the end of the day would come around, and we had Heath Richardson on staff back then, and he and I forget who he would fly with all the time would do 2 ways across the pond under the water that the fire department would arc into the pond to fill it up. I mean, it was amazing shit. And it was, like you said, it was just the beginnings of it all. So it was all still the wild, wild west. I mean, there were kind of rules, but not really.
Yeah. Heath was one of honestly, in our careers, we're given certain gifts, and Heath and I flying together was one of these gifts, where we flew. Everything that we did was just this kind of using the force kind of approach to it, where we could just read what each other's doing. And some of the best flying that I've ever done was flying with him in those days at Cross Keys, like doing head-to-head swoops under that arc from the fire hose and laying over synchronized wing overs together on the pond. And it's just, man, so many great memories.
Oh yeah. Well, and then to follow it up with Cross Keys in its heyday was also the biggest party drop zone on the planet.
I'll just say I went to the Monkey Claw Jam, the Monkey Claw Jam. What was it called? Yeah, the jam. I went 5 times, I think, and I think I jumped at the last one. Yeah, once. You know? I don't remember jumping at the first few. It was just strictly show up to have a good time and socialize with everybody.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when Cola and Egon from Relative Workshop were on the boogie circuit, bringing canopies and rigs out, and we got a hold of them one weekend at Cross Keys, and they both didn't want to leave and were terrified to stay all at the same time.
Honestly, some of my very, very dearest memories are from the time that I spent up there. So I'll diverge for a second,
please.
Selwyn. Okay, Selwyn, Johnny 9 Lives, Johnny Utah, and Will. And we would go out and hit all the buildings in Philadelphia, in Jersey City, up in New York. We were just like skydive all day, base jump all night. And and Rob Stanley, right? Muppets on Vacation. So just the list of, there was a period in there where I was actually I was the mentor for those guys. Like we would go out at the end of the day, and we'd go to looking for trouble, and we'd bring a bunch of packed rigs and find stuff to hop off.
Yep.
And those guys were beginners, and I had, quite a few more years, but they had all the energy and all the drive, and I was all about jumping on their tailcoat,
Sure.
riding in their energy wake. I'm like, you guys cut trail and I'll follow.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll navigate which way to go.
Oh, yeah.
Such good times.
Will and Selwyn, the energy that just radiated off of those two was insane. I mean,
crazy.
I'd only been at Cross Keys for, I think, a couple of days. I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know the reputation, but I was a new camera flyer and tandem instructor, and I'm just watching people landing on the back deck, and Selwyn and Will land and come running past, see me as a new jumper, and go, dude, have you got any rigs? Cool, can we jump them? And just took 2 rigs they'd never seen and got on the plane because they didn't want to miss the next load. I mean, just out of their mind energy. And then follow it up with Rob Stanley, who was part wise old sage and part 15-year-old crazy teenager, all wrapped up into one.
Man, I can tell you so many Rob Stanley stories because he's from my hometown, right? And we grew up he was the first more experienced jumper that I encountered from another drop zone who's just like, I don't care if you have 200 jumps and I've got a couple thousand. Come on, let's go. And we were doing 4-ways in the middle of the night with no lights on bandit loads at the World Free Fall Convention. We were out jumping off buildings and towers. He gave me his rig for a jet jump. It was like, come on, take my 135. I'm like, I jump a 220, it'll be fine.
Fucking Stanley. He was as unique a character as you can possibly get. I'll tell you what, man, when we lost him, I think everybody felt the same way. They were so sad that he was gone, but they also wondered how he stuck around as long as he did with us, because man, oh man, that guy pushed it every single day.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. I've never seen anybody go quite as hard as Rob Stanley. So you get into swooping, you've got the competition stuff going, PST is going well, but you've transitioned into kind of a staple in the sport and aimed yourself very much towards the business side of things, as well as the sport and the pleasure of it all. How did all that start to transition?
It's pretty obvious. I mean, that old adage that if you want to make $1 million in skydiving, you need to start with 2, right? So this is the truth of the matter is there's nobody's holding a retirement package out for me at going, come on, come do this job and you'll have a healthy retirement. Like,
right.
There's nothing, man. There ain't shit,
right?
So the reality is, by the time I had been, really, by the time I was hitting world champion status in canopy piloting, that was 2006 and 2007. I was already going, okay, well, there's nowhere to go but down, right? There's only, once you get to the top, you can sustain it for a period of time. And then after that, there's a downslope. And so I'm able to see into the future and go, well, there's no net, right? There's nobody going to catch me. So I was looking at my teammates, and we had we would do an annual retreat every year. The PD Factory team started off with, let's sit down and connect and look at each other in the eye and go, what do you want from your life? What do you want from this team? What are our goals collectively and individually? Where do they align? And what are we going to do together to do something awesome and that we couldn't do on our own? Right. So at that 2006, 2007 period, we'd already been coaching a lot. Flight One had already been formed. We had created a company to be the wheelhouse for our coaching efforts. PD Factory team was its own entity. It was a competition team. It was a Formula One team. It's pro pilots. It's all about competition and expedition and demonstration, and the educational piece, we put our arms around it. So this is going to be our baby, and we're going to sit down and we're going to partner with Scott Miller from Freedom of Flight, and we're going to develop a program for civilian skydivers to have a much more comprehensive set of knowledge and training available than anywhere else that's available in the world. And then we're also going to make that available to the military marketplace. We had already had feelers coming in from some of these special forces teams who wanted to work with us. And we look at each other and said, hey, man, we're all going to be 40. And before you know it, we're going to be 50. And if we don't have something to catch ourselves on the back end of this, we're going to be, that 50-year-old packer or tandem master or trying to scrape a living. And we all know what it's like. And I know some of you are listening who are that guy or that girl, and it's not an easy downhill when your body's coming apart and you're 50 and you're trying to still throw drogues or pack tandems,
right?
Not going to happen. So
it's definitely, I've got a few friends that are still doing it. And that was always the scary thought, was being the 50-year-old guy living in the trailer behind the tiki bar,
mm-hmm.
But now to the other side of that coin, though, I've got a friend who is exactly that, and he loves every second of it. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what is right for you,
That's it, and the big, that's just a piece of it, was like, we're pro athletes, we were training hard to be competitive athletes. And what we didn't want to go to waste is, and man, it has taken 15 years to like really bring this to fruition, is we put a ton of energy, a ton of personal energy, a ton of money, a ton of time, just group energy, time, and collective energy into figuring out what we're doing.
Sure.
What we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, because all of us had come from the school of hard knocks, right? Nobody had an easy ride. A number of us had bounced off the ground because we don't know what we're doing wrong.
Sure.
Right. And we'd seen our friends get broken, become paralyzed, or die because the system that was available in the world for learning how to fly a parachute, it fucking sucked.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's only a couple books out there. They're not comprehensive. They're missing a lot of parts. The real textbook had yet to be written. So we wanted collectively to sit down at the table and to put our heads together and to cut the educational path forward for everybody in the sport, so that anyone who is coming into skydiving does not have to make the stupid mistakes that we'd seen made for decades with square parachutes. The parachutes were evolving so much faster than our knowledge of how to handle them, and more how to teach other people how to handle them. So we made it our mission.
I was going to say, I would imagine that one of the driving forces behind Flight 1 would have been that the evolution of canopies were dramatically faster than the knowledge of its pilots, and also the desire for people to get on those fast little parachutes well before they should have, well before they had that knowledge base. I mean, all the instruction I ever got for downsizing was fly the parachute you're on until you can do anything on it, and then you can downsize. That was it.
And that's a powerful adage. Bruno Broken, one of my canopy piloting heroes in the early days, that was always his modality, was like, look, if I can't do a wing over with this canopy, I'm not ready to downsize to the next one. And that applies to every canopy. Like, if you can't make a 170 do a wing over and carve it across the pond, you haven't really learned to fly it yet. And most people are going to downsize where they can't even have a decent landing. They can't even do a nice stand up on every single jump, and they're already downsizing. Never mind do a wing over or drag a toe on a pond, So, it's perspective is everything.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you still, Flight 1 obviously is gaining popularity and doing quite well in teaching up and comers, but you still must be horrified with some of the stuff that you see out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You say gaining popularity. We just recently passed 25,000 students taught. So that's a pretty popular.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, shit, how many active USPA members are there right now?
That's a good question.
What is it? 50,000, 60,000?
Total ever?
No. I mean, active right now, but I mean, that's incredible that you've gone through 25,000 students. That's a huge number of students.
Yeah, it's been incredibly powerful, because we look at the classroom as an opportunity to learn, right? When our instructors sit in a classroom, we're there to learn, equal to or greater than the student is there. We're like, we've got 10 students sat in front of us. We want to learn from every one of their experiences how we can better mold what we do to ensure that the best interest of the pilots that are coming into the sport is truly served.
Sure, sure. Now, what's the? I would imagine there's a slight difference in the way that you teach a civilian and military. What's the progression, civilian-wise, classroom-wise, and the military guys?
So that's a yes and no kind of answer. Yes, the rate at which we teach in the military environment is much greater. The time frames are compressed and the number of jumps are higher because the military tends to be more focused on truly bringing a pilot from entry level to skilled level. They want to ensure that they reach the level of skill that's necessary to be, adequately prepared to deal with situations that are at hand. Where in the sport environment, it's really up to the individual to choose what level of skill they're going to attain.
Sure.
So that's the no, is that we don't necessarily do it as fast, but the yes is we teach the exact same stuff.
Awesome.
Okay. Now, this is the real thing where the rubber meets the road with Flight One, is that our, over 15 years of experience working with the special forces teams has forced us to level up our game. You do not maintain a position as a military contractor without delivering at the level that they operate at. Right.
Sure.
You simply are not going to get the contract if you are not top tier professional. Okay. So we've had to move and constantly escalate, constantly improve, and constantly refine what we're doing and how we're doing it to match with the expectations of these top tier teams.
Sure.
Right. Now, that investment in ourselves as instructors has immediately rolled right into the sport civilian side of our operation. So if you sit in a civilian classroom with Flight One, you're going to get the exact same level and type of training that the special forces teams are going to receive, but you're going to get it repackaged in a color scheme and in a modality that's going to fit into a civilian day at the drop zone.
Sure. Now, with the instructors that you have, are they going back and forth between civilian and military, or do you have dedicated teams?
That's both and.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's got to be cool. I mean, I know that having flown a little bit for a couple of military contracts, and then obviously the majority being civilian, and even instructing military students in free fall, military guys, I should say, that came out to do civilian free fall. The military guys are yes sir, no sir. And it's a slightly different approach to teaching than with the civilians. Or you need to be a little bit more laid back and feel them out. With the military guys, they just jump. Okay, they're gone. It's great.
Yeah, there's a lot more feelings are allowed in the room in a civilian drop zone, right?
Right.
In the military environment, you have people who are excellent at learning and excellent at taking orders and excellent at saying, yes,
sure,
I'll do that, And in the civilian world, we, need to be handheld a lot more, need to be pandered to a lot more. So it's actually a lot easier to be an instructor for military based jumpers than it is to be a civilian instructor, because in a civilian classroom. Yeah,
I completely agree with that. I always said that as a tandem instructor and AFF instructor, you have to become a bit of an untrained psychologist quite quickly to learn how to read your students and figure out what best way to teach them. And you're right, the military side of things kind of takes that out of the equation, because you're teaching them all the same way because they've been geared to learn in a specific way as well. Now,
yeah. So here's let me expand just a little bit,
please,
because I really love sharing this point, because every time people hear it, and they get that aha moment. When the PD Factory team was really getting traction in the early 2000s, and we were the pinnacle of piloting in the world, the military establishment was 20 plus years behind us as far as the skill set that they were demonstrating. And the civilian world was at the leading edge.
Sure.
And the civilian training operations was a dozen years behind. And so we worked really hard to get the civilian side up to the leading edge, and the military followed. And now the military operations have cruised right by.
Hmm.
And if you were to have your first 50 jumps occur in the military environment now, especially in the special forces environment, when you're sitting there with 50 jumps under your belt, your skill level is going to surpass somebody in the civilian world who has hundreds of jumps
Wow.
under their belt, because of the focused intention of the type of jumping that's being done. So the coin has completely flipped. And the benefit to anybody who sits in a Flight One classroom is you're getting that same modality, where if you come do 2 days with myself or one of our instructors, a typical course, a weekend course, in the 10 jumps that you're going to do, you're going to get 100 jumps worth of value.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I vividly remember as a young AFF instructor too many years ago, as soon as you found out your student was military, you kind of went, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, they're going to do what I say, but there's not going to be that understanding's not going to be there. And it just, you knew you were in for more work. And it's very interesting to hear you say that that's exactly the opposite now.
Yeah.
Now, outside of skydiving, you've also stayed motivated in many, many other ways. I mean, you've got a lot of irons in the fire, up to and including the podcast that you do. I mean, how did all these interests start outside of skydiving as well?
Yeah. So, well, let me just say this journey from day one has been a spiritual journey, right? The coming into the sport, I was in a very challenged place emotionally, spiritually. Like, the being who I've always been had a relationship to the finality of life as a whole. So this sport has only ever amplified that. It's only ever said, hey, pay attention to what's going on around you, and really gain value from the connection, from the experiences, from the beauty of it all, from really just, truly appreciating skydiving. Man, it has just made me really, really value life. There's nothing like hanging under a harness, 13,000 feet in the air, toes dangling, barefoot, no helmet, and strings, especially when it's a super tiny, nothing little parachute, and just going, how is this even possible?
Right.
And so the podcast that I co-host with Melanie Curtis, if you haven't heard of it before, it's trustthejourney.today. This podcast is all about just recognizing the journey that we're on, whether we like it or not. It is happening. Life is going by all the time. And we can find the value and the gratitude and the love and the appreciation for it all.
All right, we lost you for a second there, but you were talking about the podcast with Melanie and kind of learning to appreciate the ride we're on.
Yeah, trustthejourney.today. A number of years ago now, I was kind of wallowing a little bit. I was in a part of my life where most all of us will experience. We get a restructure somewhere in our 40s. We start to kind of see the world a little differently, in our lives a little differently. And I reached out to Melanie and said, hey, I like what you're doing and I want to work with you. And she said, I like what you're doing and I want to work with you. So we've been now working on Trust the Journey since 2018. This will be our 5th year, done a little over 100 episodes. And man, it has just been the best thing ever. I'm so happy with this choice to work together and where this project's going.
Well, it's amazing when you have the opportunity to sit and not only have good conversations with like-minded people, but take it in a proper direction that might lend help to other people. Even this podcast is generally for fun and big fish stories and origin stories for skydivers. I get a lot of people, especially you may have seen the Beginner Skydiving Forum on Facebook is a huge forum of up and coming jumpers or people that are daydreaming about skydiving. And I'm thrilled that I consistently am getting messages from them thanking me for stories like yours, because they're ones that they wouldn't ordinarily hear. And for jumpers that have been around a while, people like to hear that Jason Moledzki was scared. learning how to skydive. They want to know that shit, because if they don't know you, all they know is the lore and the big fish stories and all the amazing shit that you've done. And clearly he couldn't have been scared. Look at the stuff that he's doing. So it's really neat when you have the opportunity to put stuff out that is helping other people. And it sounds like that's exactly what you and Mel are doing.
Yeah, you're nailing it. That's the hammer hitting the nail right on the head. Our journey is laden with challenges, right? And skydiving is such a beautiful analogy. And I mean, if you're listening to this show and you haven't made a jump and you're thinking about it, just send it, just go. Like, the thing that's going to happen is we can sit here and we can kind of, kick our feet and tread water and try and get some traction. But in the end, it's all just decisions. And I think that is what we learn as aviators, as pilots, as jumpers, as people who spend our life in the sky, is we need to just make a choice. Like, we've got to move. You can't just dilly dally. Kind of, if you spend time in that in between, life is still going by, and you're going to run into that brick wall because it's coming at you. So
make
big time.
Well, I used to say it all the time. I've taken I think 8,000 tandems over the course of my career. And I've had a lot of people that would never make a second jump, but I've never had one that regretted the first. It's that living in a moment that most people don't get to experience. And you're right. I mean, it's a spectacular analogy for what life can be.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for this whole journey, the people that I've met, the places that I've been, the perspective that we gain. The perspective, I mean, you're a pilot. When you see the world from altitude, and especially when you remove yourself from the cockpit and you're just in the sky, and you see how fleeting it all is and how important it is to really take the opportunity to make these deeper connections, to teach others, to really find the value in it all. We're like, enjoy it while we can.
Well, and I mean, you hit it a couple of times on the podcast. I think the biggest thing that I've gotten out of skydiving is the community, bar none. The incredible people all across the sport and all different walks of life that you get to meet. And then there's the activity itself. And I'm sure you've done the same thing many, many times. You find yourself in the moment thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I get to do this. I don't know anybody else outside of our sport, or for me, outside of the cockpit, who goes to work and takes thousands of pictures on his phone because what's outside his office window is just so fucking cool.
Yeah.
Who gets to do that?
Yeah. That's the life we want to live, right? Where it's an inspired life. It's just breathtaking. Yeah.
Well, it's funny now. I'm sure you obviously, I'm sure, have a lot of connections outside the sport as well, but people outside the sport seem to have a very difficult time understanding how those decisions you're talking about seem to come easier to us. And I am not sure I can answer that either. Maybe you can. I think that big life decisions, changing jobs, moving to different countries, I've never had a huge problem with that after becoming a skydiver. It just seemed natural. All right, take the leap, make the choice. But do you think that that's because of the sport?
I think that when we learn how to operate in flow state, a lot of skydiving is a flow state experience. The more time we spend in flow, the more often we put ourselves there, whether that's skydiving or flying a plane or riding a motorcycle or a bicycle, skateboard. Anytime that we get out of thinking too far ahead or thinking too much in our past and really just staying in our present moment, we start to act from our instinctual knowing of what the next move needs to be. And we're not thinking it through cognitively, we just know because we've trained ourselves. That relates into all the different parts of our lives. We start feeling the right and the wrong move, and I'll take an analogy. Here's a great one. So if you're a skydiver, try this sometime. Okay. At any time when you're under your parachute, you're hanging in your holding area, you could turn right to go behind you, to go further downwind, or you could turn left to go behind you. it kind of doesn't make any difference because you're just heading the same direction either way. But one of them's going to feel right and one of them's going to feel wrong. And that inner intuition, that knowing, oh, I should turn left this time or I should turn right this time, that overlays into our confidence to make the bigger picture decisions in the rest of our life.
Sure. Now, sitting where you are at this point in your life and at this point in your career and knowing where it all started, did you ever imagine that this all would have happened? I mean, you've been on an exceptional ride over the last almost 30 years now.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And one of the reasons I'm writing a book right now is because it's so unfathomable to myself. I could not imagine it. It's outside of the scope of my own comprehension for that to be a possibility, never mind be something that I've actually lived and experienced.
Sure.
So I'm trying to get it all down on paper so that I can even just review the insanity of it all for myself and share it with others, to have that reference.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because even the average skydiving career, just a normal jumper, has stories that the rest of the world, the non-jumpers and the more mainstream life won't understand. But for someone like you, and I've had more than my fair share of stories as well, I find myself telling stories to non-jumpers, not believing what I'm saying. And I was there because I almost start to hear it through their ears and realize, yeah, the shit that we've done and been able to do and been, I hate to use the word blessed, but it is blessed to be able to do these things is almost unreal to people that haven't been there.
Yeah. The bigger picture of this all, I look at the journey and I shake my head just in wonder and in awe. I remember I try to remind myself that every day has the potential to hold these experiences, right? Like, what is the next amazing thing around the corner? And in the skydiving, it sets us up with kind of that wide-eyed child's view where we can just be like, wow, anything is possible. Absolutely anything is possible if we just allow it to be possible.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and it's having the drive as well, which I think starts to come as soon as you get into something like that. I mean, I think it's its own driving force. As soon as you get into skydiving, it becomes the whole motivation for everything. But that also leads to so many other things in life, which is fantastic.
It's contagious, right?
Yes.
It's contagious within ourselves, and it's contagious in groups and the people that we connect with. So.
Oh, absolutely. So I always ask as I get towards the end of the podcast for advice for two different groups of people, people that are just getting into skydiving and kind of want to know what they should be thinking and how they should be thinking, and people that have been in the sport for a long time and maybe getting a bit burned out and wondering if they should stay in the sport and why they should stay in the sport. So speak to those two groups of people, if you would.
My advice hasn't really changed much over the last 20 years. And I feel really good about that because I feel like what I have to say still has the same value. All right. So if you're coming into the sport and you want to figure out how to navigate, get as much reputable advice from as many different sources as possible, right? Collect your own big pool of information and then make your own decisions about the best way forward based on the aggregate of all that information together, right? Don't get stuck in, I've got one person who teaches me and that's the way. Get a big pool of information and it's easily available to everybody out there. And now swing the compass needle the other direction. You've been in this your whole life. You've been in it for a long time. You know everything, just like me. Go get a coach. Go try something new, be a student again and fumble and be terrible at something, be terrible and remember what it's like to learn anyways and set our egos aside and go have fun being a student. And all of a sudden it's fresh and new. Yeah.
Well, that's it's funny that you say that is my greatest accomplishment in this sport is knowing or coming to grips with and happily accepting the fact that some of the stuff in the sport I just suck at and it's fun. I thoroughly enjoy being the worst person on a skydive and knowing that I have something to learn from all these other people, because it's so fun to draw that knowledge out of other people, especially when you have access in this wonderful sport to such rock stars and such talent. I mean, skydivers are extremely accessible. I don't know too many that are above going out and giving a tip here and there and helping somebody out. I mean, this podcast is proof of that.
Yeah, I mean, I just received a package in the mail yesterday, and I made a little post. I'll put it up. I'm going to put it up today. Dan BC sent me a copy of his book. Okay. When I was learning to skydive year one and I was a total rookie, I looked at Arizona Airspeed as the pinnacle because they're the very best in the best of the best. And I dreamed of being as good as those guys one day. And it wasn't that many years later that I was sitting next to them in the plane, that we're becoming friends. And now this, Dan BC, one of the biggest mentors in our sport, sending me a autographed copy of his book, continuing this mentorship journey, 30 years down the road. And that's the great thing about being in such a small sport, is that our heroes and our mentors are so accessible, and we can get that, direct connection with these people who are so important.
And it's generational as well, because you are that to a lot of the people that are coming up. You and the organization that you and your gang have set up is doing the exact same thing, and it's just furthering the sport. I mean, it's just giving back. And of course, the huge benefit, as you know, is there's not really an age limit on skydiving. I mean, you can keep jumping very late into life as long as you're healthy. So it's this ongoing thing. It's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I want you to tell everybody how they follow you social media wise. How are they going to find out about Flight One? How do they find out about courses and all that stuff, and more about the podcast?
No problem. Flight-1.com will get you to our website, and Flight One Sport will find us on Instagram. That'll get you to everything Flight One related. Trustthejourney.today, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Patreon, SoundCloud. We're on all the channels. I highly encourage you to jump on there and have a listen. You can find me at jasonmoledzki.com. A new website just launched. That's its first version, so I'm treading water there with trying to get myself started.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm really going to be looking forward to the book coming out. This is something that I'd like to get my hands on. So please make sure that you're keeping everybody aware, and get to writing, man, because I want to read it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm really enjoying the process of reliving all of the adventures and really trying to find the value and recognize, why share all this stuff? What's it really all about? So
Sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
Well, hey, look, man, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your morning to sit down and talk to me. There's about a billion stories that I'd like to get out of you, but we'll save that for round two.
Thank you, Gene. It's a true pleasure, man. I've really enjoyed chatting with you as well.
Awesome, man. You take care. And there you have it. Another episode of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, brought to you as always by, and say it with me, fuck yeah, NZ Aerosports. Head to nzaerosports.com. By Pussfoot. That's right. Head to pussfoot.com, the extreme sports collective, and check out everything they've got to offer. By summitparachutesystems.com. Jarrett Martin and the family cranking out amazing pilot rigs, as well as incredible rigging courses. And now joining the Lunatic team, it's the one and only Tony Suits. You know him, you love him. Head to tonysuit.com. Check out all the amazing standards, as well as the new incredible signature line they've got going on. And as for us, the Lunatic Fringe is now on YouTube. That's right, you're going to have the chance to put faces to the audio by heading to youtube.com and looking up the Lunatic Fringe podcast. It's easy. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check out all the amazing videos from the previous guests that we've had, as well as new and upcoming interviews on video. As always, I am the fucking pilot. Head to thefuckingpilot.net or theprincesspilot.com. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time around.